perfect. I'm going to ship it up to Sydney, and Zoran will teach it up there. So hopefully there'll be some continuity. So Zoran will obviously be teaching exactly, well, I can't say he'll be teaching exactly the same because, as you might have noticed, Zoran and I are quite different. But the general material will be exactly the same. And Jenny, I presume they'll just, if I'm doing talks, they'll listen to the same talk? Yeah, okay. So, not recording Sydney, I think it's too small. Yeah. So Zoran won't do any different talks because this is well, he will. Because he can't help himself. But so that brings me to what these 2 weeks are about. So in the grand scheme of things, this first week is the final week of the first half of your training. Hello. Got that? So you're kind of halfway. We're roughly halfway through at the end of this first week, and so the general scheme of things with, as you know, with professional training programs is that we concentrate a reasonable amount on teaching ATM, doing ATM, experiencing it, and then springboarding off the experience into teaching it in the first half of the program, and in the second half of the program more about FI. However, over the many years, we've realised that being exclusive like that is not particularly helpful. So you've already done actually quite a bit around the FI stuff. And just because the ATM teacher kind of certification can happen at the end of this week doesn't mean that we won't continue to experience, teach, discuss ATM in the second half. Okay, is that clear as mud? So it's not compartmentalised as much as you would think. However, in your minds, you might be compartmentalising it and thinking about the practicum this week. So Jenny sent around an email where we outlined what we would like to do, and that's on Thursday, Jen. And we'll do 3 sessions at morning 9:30, 11, 2. So Jenny's also sent an email around for those who are local, if you've got any friends. Will we have a sign-up sheet somewhere? Okay. So have a think about, you can choose which I think you can choose which session you're teaching. We have a sign-up sheet for that. And you'll be teaching your lesson. So it'll be pretty much the same structure as you did with Julie in April. However, this time you'll choose an ATM of your own, like it's a real thing. And as we said in the email, we don't really don't do something heroic like headstands or judo rolls or something like that. Something that you have experienced a lot, so that you can teach from the sense of your own experience. It would be helpful if you liked the ATM. I don't think now is the time to choose an ATM that you really hate and you want to set yourself a challenge, unless you want to. But no, why bother? And sort of work with that ATM. Hopefully you've been thinking about it, and what the sort of kind of meta theme in it might be about. It might be about comfort. It might be about learning to go slowly. It might be about learning to learn. It might be about something little, nothing big and spectacular. We don't want a public lecture, but just so that you can have that as as a bit of a piece. Does that all ring a bell from the email? Is everybody on their way to being prepared? Are you on your way? I didn't notice. I didn't say who's prepared, because some of you will be and some of you won't have started. Yes. No. So you need to think about how you can condense it. I don't want to lecture about it, just something that you might hold in mind. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'll have an hour to get people ready, lying on the floor. So the folk themselves will be in this room for an hour. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, so it's only an hour out the front. So, 59 minutes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that's the sort of, I mean, obviously when you're running your own classes, you can run them for as long as you think that your students will last. But generally speaking, you hire a hall for an hour. And so that you're in and you're out in that kind of hour. I mean, I guess most halls allow you a bit of a bump in, bump out time for things, but that's the sort of discipline. And it always seems people get a bit when you use the D word in Feldenkrais, because if there's no discipline in Feldenkrais, well, it's incredibly disciplined. It's just a very soft D for the discipline, isn't it? No. Well, actually, it's about self-discipline, isn't it? That's actually what it's about. It's not my discipline imposing on your discipline. It's about self-discipline. And I'm saying that for the tapes, acknowledging the environment in which we live. Speaking of which, I forgot to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I can't remember it from one year to the next. So we pay our respects to the Wurundjeri people and their elders, past, present and future, and we recognise that their culture continues to inspire us, hopefully even more into the future. And interestingly, around the acknowledgement, I've been to some spectacular acknowledgements and welcomes to country lately. And there was one the other day where a young Ghana chap, that's the land that Adelaide sits on, actually got us to stop and feel the ground under our feet. And use a really somatic, he didn't use the word somatic, but a physical acknowledgement of country. So you might just want to take a moment and feel the ground under your feet as a connection to country. Because I thought immediately, well, this is what we do, isn't it, in Feldenkrais? We feel this connection to the ground. And so from an Aboriginal perspective, it's a connection to country, which I think we can relate to. So that was really nice. I went to a talk with Ernie Dingo, and then he gave another explanation of the welcome to country when, someone whose land we are sitting on welcomes you to country and you're under their protection. Isn't that amazing? You'll probably all know this. I'm a bit dumb about this stuff, but anyway. So it's like going into somebody's home and, following their rules and having their protection because you're in their home. So I don't think, is anybody here Wurundjeri? So we can't do welcome, but we can at least acknowledge. Okay, terrific. So, so for this 2 weeks, so that's the thing that front and centre for you. Now, how do you hold that experience lightly enough that it doesn't, obsess you, and that we can get on with the other learning? Yeah. We just ring a bell. So, I mean, yeah, it's you can schedule some anxiety if you like. Yeah. No, that's all right. I'm happy to ring an anxiety bell, and then we just get it over and done with for 30 seconds. So this is about, this is a really great opportunity to reflect, continually to reflect on what a challenge does to your attention. So I'm not saying, I'm using challenge because for some of you this is like no big deal. For some of you this is really hard because we're requiring you to be a bit extroverted and Well, you're not centre stage as an ATM teacher, actually. You are very much should be in the wings, but because the lesson is the centre stage and the students. However, how do you manage that? How do you stay present in this front end of the week in particular so that your learning continues to happen in that pervasive way and not get squeezed to the sidelines by the end of the week? Yes, I mean, so this is what we do in life all the time, isn't it? We have something that might dominate our attention. It might be clamoring for our attention. And that's fine, and it needs some attention because you have to prepare. But how do we manage that insistent request for attention in the face of all the other things that are there to be done? No, it's really hard, isn't it? Acknowledging it is the first thing. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. Good point. So the thing will be, now I wasn't here in April, obviously, with Julie and Jenny can tap in, but there'll be 3 staff and there'll be 6 groups. So there'll be 6 people teaching in each of the 3, so that's 18 up here. And can we spill into other rooms? Yeah. So there'll be myself and Jenny and Ruth, and we'll just be quiet. We'll have a pair each. So, you'll teach back to back, so to speak. So your voice will go there and the other person's voice will go there. And you'll have your group of however many people we can get. We'd like to get sort of 3, 6, 12. No, not really. But the maximum probably 5 each would be amazing. But I doubt that we would get that many folk. What did you get last in April? Yep. So the maximum sort of 5 to track for you. So 1 instructor, 2 teachers, one staff like Jenny and myself and Ruth, and we'll have 2 teachers each. And so we'll be listening to, say, you teaching, and then give you feedback. Now, in terms of, so you have the hour to have people come in, get comfortable, get them in position. Before that, obviously, you can have the room set up a bit if you're doing a chair lesson or whatever. So you have a little bit of prep time before that hour. You won't have to prep during the hour. And then you'll teach, and then you'll thank everybody, make sure everybody's okay, and then public will move off, and then we'll have a feedback session. So in terms of the learning opportunity, if I can use that phrase, we've got some handouts for you to contemplate what you personally want to focus on. So Zoran's reformatted the what are we calling them? Landmarks for learning. And I think we sort of hinted at this in the email, that you'll be thinking of a couple of things that you particularly want to practice for yourself. So it might be voice clarity, it might be speed of presentation, it might be use of language, it might be your physical presence, it might be any of those sorts of qualities that we've talked about, anything in the job description for ATM teachers, and that's what you are aiming to practice and what you would like feedback on. And so that will be made known to the students in the group and to the staff person who's listening to you. And then after you've taught, you'll ask for feedback about those things. So it's a negotiated feedback. Yep. And then you have a little break, and then the next round will start. Same deal, have a feedback, have a little break, next thing will start. Is that how you did it in April? Everybody all together? Okay, as a big group. Okay, we'll do it sort of individual this time, I think. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. So if you'd like a little rehearsal time on the Wednesday, that's fine. Now, if you got nobody has to rush off and work tables every night, so they haven't got time to prepare this. You've got time to prepare this in the evenings. If not, or you haven't already. Okay, you don't need class time to prepare other than the Wednesday. If you want, yeah, okay. Yep, Wednesday. Ah, that would take up a lot of class time. You'll miss out on, you could do it at a lunchtime. Yep, if you wanted to just, yep, yep, yep. Something that makes them jumpy after the lesson. No chocolate before the lesson. Okay, so that's Thursday. Any other questions about Thursday? On a scale of 10, this Thursday. Yeah, so I thought it would be better to do that in this first week, just so that, just in case people are tempted to, get nervous, so that the nervous doesn't spill out into the whole, just bleed into the whole 2 weeks. And yeah, yes, do another practice. Yeah, yep. Now, there's something that Julie tried in the first CS1 training, which was to keep doing little practicums for ATM teaching in the subsequent segments. So that this is not a big, in your minds, if you want to make this out as a big hurdle event, that's absolutely fine. It's not particularly, because you've identified the things you need to work on anyway, and we are keen to explore that, to continue to have opportunities to teach and get feedback in the next half of the program, because it's as you get more sort of into the FI stuff, you'll start to notice you get better at teaching ATM, because you're getting better and better at observing movement. So I think that's a really interesting idea that we might explore. Jenny, do you agree that worked well in CS1? More opportunities? Yeah, so it's not such a clean break between ATM teaching. Okay, now we're going to do hands-on. You see that they are two sides of the same coin in that sense. Okay, all right. So so you can see how, in my half hour of intro, that the Thursday has taken up a lot of attention, and that's absolutely fine. And that's what's going to happen in your little noodle boxes around attention. It's going to demand attention, and that's appropriate, and it needs to be acknowledged. However, you might want to then spend a bit of time thinking about so that's thinking it through, and we want you to think it through and plan it and prepare it and feel prepared. And this will also offer you the opportunity to examine what the emotional valence of those thoughts are. So what's the emotional tag that you're putting onto those? Is it anxiety? Is it, if you're a show pony, I'm just looking at you just because maybe you are, maybe you're not. No, you're not. You're not. It was a terrible stereotype, because we're talking about dance and we're talking about, performance. No, actually, I am probably the only show pony in the room looking around. No, I reckon I'll probably win that one. Then this is a great opportunity. So you go, yes, show pony, hooray. But if you're not that person, maybe, actually play with what the emotions are and what they are actually attached to, because they'll be attached to some scenario that often you'll bury, the scenario underneath. Like, what am I actually anxious about? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just anxious about presenting. What is it about presenting that I'm actually anxious about? What would warrant the anxiety? without going into a whole lot of therapizing. It's just an opportunity, that's all, because it actually doesn't, I mean, it matters in that, we don't want you to hurt folk, the public coming in. We want, you want them to have a pleasant experience. But what's your anxiety? Is your anxiety that you will hurt somebody? Is your anxiety that they won't get it? Is your anxiety that they won't like you? Is your anxiety that you'll forget something? Whatever it is, think about those sorts of things. Maybe we'll have a bit of time. You can get in small groups and share a little bit about that. Because I find that fascinating when you actually dig underneath the anxiety. It'll be something really remediable. Like, oh God, I don't want to make a dick of myself. Well, who cares? Really? Is the world going to end if you make a dick of yourself? And what does making a dick of yourself actually mean? I do it professionally. Anyway. Okay, so now I've obsessed with Thursday. So for this first week, we've got a series of ATMs. So you probably have noticed that, maybe we've told you, that the ATM sequences that we've been doing have had a fairly clear developmental theme. It's very strong in the early segments, and then you start to sort of lose it and that's what happens developmentally, is because there's just this explosion of skills that go off in many different directions. If you think about a child, and you can think about your grandchildren, because I know that's where you're thinking already, where you're watching this sort of, there's fairly sort of linear development, and then bang, this big explosion of skills. And we're sort of at that developmental stage. So because the world's opened up to you, literally the 360-degree world has opened up to you. So this first series of ATMs this week are in sitting, mostly. And of course, now that you're all classified floor fish, you've got sitting ATMs. They're quite demanding. And that's a good thing, to do a demanding series of ATMs. Not demanding in that they're not gymnastic, but they are very demanding about taking care of yourself. So something that's come out in the online stuff is about how do you help other people to take care of themselves during an ATM. So in this series, you really do have to take care of yourself, and you have to work out this self-discipline thing. Because they're actually not, that's not, as I said, gymnastic. They're very subtle, and the position of them is not always to your liking, let's say. So there are various strategies that you have to adopt, and they sort of they sort of bring you up face to face with whether your strategy is just to ignore discomfort and do it anyway, or whether you chicken out at the first sign of discomfort and go to sleep, or whether you do something in between. Okay, so there's that series, and they're called the head circles. So again, they're demanding from a sensory point of view, because they'll clear out your vestibular system big time. It's not quite. What are they? Oh, I should know, because my son does it. This death metal stuff where you turn your head around and around and around. What's that called? Well, that's that. But there's this twirly thing. When my son had long hair, his head go. Now his friends who still got long hair, and they just do this, and their hair goes shoo, shoo, shoo. Yeah, it's amazing. And they come. No, it's full circle. I can't do it because I'll spin out. But it's a full, and their hair whips around. There used to be a dancer in ADT who did it all the time, like 10 years ago. But it's the thing, they all sit. They're called windmills or something. And then death metal concerts, they lean over like this and do this. Have you seen it? God, you're all so old. And the next morning they have really sore necks. Like really, I can tell when my son's been to one of these concerts, a really sore neck. Yeah, I think it's windmills. I'll have to text him in the break. Okay, so we do head circles, but not like that. Now the other process that I thought, because I think it's, maybe this is interesting, maybe it's not, is that back home we're running a little trial with Feldenkrais with people with stroke. And it's one of my PhD students, and the beautiful and marvellous Jane Searle and Margaret Mayo, who I'd like to give a massive thank you to, have donated their time to teach these classes. So these are two Feldy practitioners in Adelaide. phenomenally fabulous women who have done this. And it's just a little feasibility trial to see if people with stroke can, firstly, do ATMs, and secondly, maybe there's a potential benefit. So it's a feasibility trial first and foremost. So it's a really good opportunity to think about how you teach lessons to people who are actually really significantly disabled. So these people pretty much all have moderate to severe stroke, and they go to a class twice a week. And the series is from a series of classes taught by Feldenkrais called the Elderly Citizen Series. Anybody know them? So they're quite simple. And so Jane teaches it on a Monday and Margaret teaches it again on the Thursday, and it's a 10-week series. So I think they're up to I think this is week 9 in the trial. And then the control group are doing the same classes but from a tape at home, because we've done Feldy RCTs in the past where the control group's done nothing or something else, and it's not a good comparison. So we thought, well, we'll just compare attending a class as a group with doing it at home. So we're recording it. So I'm recording those transcripts of the Elderly Citizen Series, and I'm happy to do that in here. I can actually record. I did the first one last night. So boring, teaching to a blank wall. But I can teach them to you, and then we can talk about them because they're really simple. And then we can use them as an example of what would you do, because this is happening in real time back home, obviously, is that Margaret and Jane are having to adapt these lessons to folk with severe stroke. And so one of the stories is in about, I don't know which lesson it is, maybe the 3rd or 4th week, they get down on the floor. And like this was hell and anxiety for pretty much the whole group of people with stroke. I mean, Margaret was telling me on the phone last week that they're coming up to sort of some of the end lessons when they're in prone. And some of these people with stroke haven't laid on their tummies since their stroke, let alone been on the floor. So this is hardcore, isn't it? But of course, if you know Margaret and Jane really well. If you know Margaret Mayo, she is nothing is daunting for Margaret. So they're both really experienced working with people with disability. So their confidence really helps in giving people the confidence to do it. But they've had everybody on the floor bar one, and that guy's lying on a plinth. And Margaret was saying she thinks now that they could help him down on the floor and get back up. But that's probably going to be the biggest finding of the trial, is that these people were so anxious about getting down on the floor, and now they have, and they're popping up and down off the floor all the time, and their anxiety's gone. So if you think about, for someone who's got a disability, who's probably elderly, the fear of being on the floor is extraordinary. You might have noticed that with your aging parents, is that everybody, they're frightened of falling or having a fall as it becomes. But they're even more, why are they frightened of falling? Because they think that they'll get stuck there. They'll get stuck on the floor. So that little functional skill in and of itself is really important. However, you could be a bit frightened about helping people to get on the floor, maybe. Yep. So that's the possibility, or helping people to get to lie on their tummy if they've got a really dense, hemiparesis from a stroke or something. So we'll go through that series, and we'll do maybe one lesson every now and again, and then we can talk about them and what you might do, or how you would modify it. And that Elderly Citizen series is readily available, I think. Is that through IFF or is that through Feldenkrais Resources? Yeah, so you can get that one online. And Feldenkrais is quite sweet in it. It's in his voice. We were going to use his voice for the control group, but the PhD student, who's not a Feldenkrais practitioner, she said she could sort of understand him, but it wasn't. An Israeli accent is quite foreign for us. In Australia, we're quite sheltered in terms of accents, so that's why I'm doing it in my dulcet tones. But from the transcript. So it's a pilot trial. It's a pilot RCT, so you don't have to have a hypothesis for a pilot trial. You have the question is, there's several questions. is it feasible? So you have to define feasibility. So it means, is it, do the people come? Can they participate? At what level? So we're measuring, whether they attend, whether they participate. And then the second question is, is there preliminary evidence for effectiveness or benefit? But it's only small, so we won't have sufficient numbers to be confident about an effect size, if there is. But what we're looking at, because it fits in with the PhD, is this notion about body awareness. So what we're measuring before and after is measures of body awareness. And there's some simple measures of function. But the hard thing with Feldenkrais is, what is the benefit? Tell me what the benefit of Feldenkrais is. Like, for every one of you, there's going to be 5 answers, and they're probably all quite different. So which benefit do we measure? It's the pain in the bum about Feldenkrais research, is because it could benefit anything. Someone might sleep better. Somebody else might think better. Somebody else, in Alan Questel's words, might like themselves more. Do you know what I mean? Like, and other people just might have less shoulder pain. Not just, but, it can range for that much. So that's what makes it hard. So we've used a scale before where they set a little goal and rate whether it's easier or harder at the end of it. That seems to work quite well. And then we'll do qualitative. So it's a mixed methods. Who's the mixed methods person in here? No. Got any researchers in here? Oh, no, yeah. So the CS1, Trish is a mixed methods person. Okay. So that's that. So that's the process at the moment. So you can be part of that process, and we can talk about, and I can actually get Jane and Margaret to sort of write in about other modifications that they've done to make that series accessible. Yeah. So that's for this week. That's the 2 ATMs, and the elderly citizen will probably go into next week as well. In terms of just straight knowledge, this week, roughly, we've penciled in starting to talk more about neuroscience and what that realm means. So remembering in your landmarks for learning, there's a section on relevant knowledge from other disciplines. So that's the relevant knowledge from other disciplines this week that we'll concentrate on. Some work from neuroscience, some current thinking about the way the brain works, the neuroplastic sort of stuff, etc. I think that's about enough for this week, isn't it? Hello. So what I would be interested in, before we get down to the tin tacks, is what else in this week, and it's not exclusive to this week, but what would be particularly helpful for you that you've been contemplating since April about becoming an ATM teacher? This emergent role that will continue to emerge for the rest of your life, I'm here to tell you, is what would help you. And remember, Box Hill's a dry zone, so it can't be alcohol.
Hello?
Hello.
Is it on? Yeah, cool. I've just been thinking about how to pick what ATMs for who. Obviously, you have to know who you're teaching to then target ATMs. But yeah, I'm a little bit lost in that because there's so many out there. I mean, like if you're going to do a back series, like you could kind of target certain ones maybe, but just it's just so broad. I just maybe a framework how to come at that.
Okay, so how to choose ATMs for various people. The other thing that has come out of the online stuff is how to adapt an ATM, and I mean that more in the moment as well as before. When you know what your group is, then you have to do it in the moment. Yeah, yep. Anything else? Oh, sorry, to Jane. Sorry.
I'm thinking about how I just like to interview people about what they find helpful. So people's perspective of what.
Before the lesson?
Yeah, even if you and Jenny get up and just talk about when you were starting out, what helped you learn things.
Okay, starting out in our practice.
Yeah, what was helpful to you when you were at our stage of putting things together.
I have terrible trouble with right and left when it's opposite to me.
Yeah.
And in particular, that how to adapt an ATM, I was able to teach one to my normal group, and I had to adapt it. And I'd relied heavily on getting the right and left right by having it all scripted. And then when I have to adapt it, my brain, it's like it just freezes. I have to almost get into the posture.
Yeah.
So if there's any tips about that, that would be very good.
I'll put freezing as a second thing, but because that can happen for any reason.
I've been thinking about, so I taught a couple of classes between the last segment, but I did it in a longer format, and I've been thinking about the difference between teaching a regular group in a weekly format versus, there's some teachers I see who do like one workshop a month in a longer format. So thinking about that, and then also communicating, I guess this is kind of maybe going more to the marketing side of our practices, communicating what you'll be doing in the lesson to people who may not have come to one before.
So after the lesson or before the lesson?
Before, getting them there.
Oh, marketing. Okay,
yeah.
Communicating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these things are, I don't think there's like the big sessions, but I'll try and weave as I'm teaching, some possibilities for these as I'm teaching. This one in particular, Jenny will continue to address. And what's really helpful, and we can talk about this more next week perhaps, is to use the opportunity of being a student to set up a class. Because people, and it can be either a low fee class or a no fee class, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can charge full tote odds because you're allowed to. But using this as a bit of a hook to say, I really need people to come because I'm a student. And we've done this in the past. You can buddy up with somebody and co-run a class or something. But while you're in this really nurturing environment and you are closely connected with each other, it's a really good opportunity to do that together and share a class. So we'll talk more about that maybe next week, about how we can set that. When would that be useful for us to set up as a in-between segment process? And where you can actually structure a weekly series, or you could structure a workshop, and we'll make ourselves available as staff to review what you're proposing to do and give you feedback about it before you do it, and so forth. But that's sort of, I'm jumping the gun quite a bit. That's just, it's a good opportunity, and you can record yourself. We can listen to it if you like, and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, that will help with that, the workshops versus the weekly. Okay, anything else that I can cover as we're going through this week, next week and forever?
Personally, I need to develop my skills a lot more in my observation skills of the students. Where they're at, are they getting to the point where they could help themselves? How comfortable am I about them just sleeping the whole lesson? All these sorts of observation skills.
Okay, yep. So the way I'll try and address these things is, as I'm teaching you, I'll go a bit meta and tell you what I'm thinking as what I'm observing, and then what I'm thinking, and then what I'm doing about it. So I'll just keep doing that, and it will drive you crazy because I'll go, and now I'm thinking about law, and you go, shut the hell up, because I just want to get into the lesson, because it will take you out of process a bit. It'll take you out of the ATM student process, and it will jump you into teacher process, which will be a little bit jarring, or else you'll just ignore me, but I'll do that. Okay. But what I'm doing when I see people, although some of the big sleepers aren't here, they're in Sydney. Okay. Yeah.
So
when you're having a rest, how much like resisting that pressure to just babble on, and when do you pause and have a silence, and when do you kind of fill it with a bit of what I call Feldy patter? Do you know what I mean? Like and where's that nice balance of rabbiting on about sounding like an idiot and just letting people actually have a little rest? And yeah, because I find that very hard to resist that sort of yes, being comfortable with the silence.
Yeah. I mean, there's some great.
No, it's just like, Peter, if you know what I mean. Oh, rabbiton. Well, maybe that's what it sounds. To me, that's what it feels like. I'm just blah, 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 blah.
What I'm thinking, I'm very short on experience, and I've got a couple of things. I've joined a university the third age, so I'll just go and put my name down on a board and hopefully get a class going there for experience. I've found a couple of nursing, or not retirement villages close to home, and as you said, you'll never stop learning.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've really started properly yet. And
yes, you have.
And I probably won't until I have a regular class where you're actually under a little bit of pressure to perform.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing. I'm looking for somewhere to go and play.
Yep. Okay.
Low pressure playing, of course.
So there's some great concepts in there about when did you start learning this stuff. Well, I mean, I could be facetious and say as soon as you walked into this town hall, but actually, I mean, you're actually drawing on learning from, I mean, the first ATM you do in here is sucking. That's drawing on the learning from when you were born. So I'm not saying your whole life has, been leading you into the Feldenkrais training program. That's a bit pretentious, but seeing, in uni we talk about the sort of lifelong learning thing. It's become quite a hackneyed phrase, but actually, that's actually what we're about here. And it's about drawing in all of the learnings that you've had in your life to help with that, and not seeing as that the learning will start, in the future, but it's actually drawing on all of it. And we mean that. We mean that. It's not a facetious thing. All right. Anything else that would allay any anxieties? Yes. Yeah.
I came in late, so I didn't hear it all, but my main one was, people that can't get down on the floor for whatever particular reason, and I assume that's what you were talking about, we were covering this week. whether it's fear or like a physical problem or like
Yeah.
that's the main one that kind of puts me off going and asking at the retirement villages and things like that for now until I've got that a little bit more confidently.
Yeah. So I don't know when you walked in, but we're going to use a really simple series that Feldenkrais taught called Elderly Citizen, and they're very simple lessons, and starting off in a chair and then eventually getting people on the floor if they can, or however you adapt. Now, interestingly, because I've been reading the transcripts of these, well, Jane's transcripts are not full, so I can't give them to you, they're just notes. But he says that you can do these sitting on the edge of a bed. Well, buggered if I can feel very much with these lessons sitting on the edge of a bed. But that's how adaptable he is about it. So you can, we can talk about whether you think that is that possible? So, because these are recorded lessons for elderly citizens that people just, would buy the ATMs and do them on their own. So they're standalone. They're not for a group as such. Well, that's not the way he taught them. He recorded them for elderly citizens to do individually at home on their bed or something.
This is just my little anxieties coming out. But,
that's what we're here for.
If we were teaching in a nursing home or something and someone has a heart attack or, are we protected in terms of professional indemnity and those kind of issues? And what is supervision, and are we under supervision? Or
so I put that as first aid and responsibilities.
Or if someone tries to sue us as we're doing the class and something happens, sort of
and
thing.
I'll put that as professional issues, which Jen covers a bit in her sort of business stuff, but we can talk a bit about as well. Yeah, because they're real. And there's always an ongoing conversation about professionalism. And the Guild has a code of ethics, and we have standards of practice. And we might actually make them available to you because these are real issues. But this is a professional role, and we do have standards of practice that were established when I was a student, actually, and they've been exercised recently. Where a practitioner, not in this country, thank goodness, has operated in an unethical way. So these, they're things that are worth talking about. This is, and not all of you are interested in doing this as a profession as such, but I think we're in times where we need to really pay attention to this. I mean, we've always been in times where we should have paid attention to this thing, but it's I think in this sort of Me Too environment, it's even more important that we think about how we conduct ourselves and how we entered this role of being a teacher, because you are a teacher, and those of you who've been teachers or professionals in some way know the responsibility, because there's a power that comes with it. Now, we can joke about that power in here because, we're trying to be teachers that are very small p power and we're not exerting a lot of power, but don't be mistaken, it's still there. And you still have a teacher-student relationship where people will see you as an expert and therefore you have power. So even if you don't claim the power yourself, you'll be given the power. And how you manage that is really important. So for those of you who haven't had to work with that before, it's something that we can talk about and think about. And those of you who've dealt with that, we can discuss. I mean, interestingly, it's come up in two different arenas of my life. And one, obviously, is the Feldenkrais community, where we've said, well, we've always had a code of ethics and standards of practice. They haven't necessarily been enforced in other places, but they've always been there. But because we don't use them, they've kind of slipped under. We've actually got a grievance procedure in the AFG, the Australian Feldenkrais Guild. And it's not, when I was involved in the national committee, there were a couple of grievances about practitioners, which, we dealt with properly, in a way, because we've got procedures and so forth. But in this other organisation that I'm in sort of involved with, and a teacher was behaving badly, they've kind of not fallen apart, But I cannot tell you the angst that now they're kind of now they're putting in a code of conduct. Like now, and it's a huge, big international organisation. They haven't actually had one, which beggars belief. But the angst that it's caused in people to have a code of conduct. This is really interesting for me because I've always, in my whole adult life, worked in organisations, professions where we've had standards of practice and codes of conduct. And so it's made me really rethink, actually, this is really new for a lot of people, like really new. So I'm kind of reeling from the shock of that, but I have to accept that that's the reality for people who are not aware of it. And I had coffee with a woman last Saturday who's just thinks the whole code of conduct thing is like Big Brother. And so that's so different from my perspective, but it's a valid perspective. And I have to work with that. So I'm just putting that out there to say that if you have a sort of a real antibody reaction to codes of conduct, we have to work that through. Does that make sense? I was really gobsmacked. So, I don't, if you feel that way too, then I'm learning to broaden my mind a bit. Yes.
So that segues really, or at the beginning of that, which is you will be looking for certain things on Thursday.
Yep.
So I mean, we've had feedback, but sort of based on what we've asked for feedback for in the past.
Yep.
But clearly, you and Jenny and Ruth will be looking for things, both things that you don't want to see and things that you do want to see.
Yes.
And I guess having you the three of you being able to articulate that for us would be helpful.
Yeah, and we will do more than articulate. I'll put it there as competencies because that's the sort of, an industry word. So and we wouldn't, here we wouldn't use a word like evaluation, but you're absolutely right. And we don't want to diminish that we are looking for competencies, evidence of competencies. And we're happy for those competencies to be negotiated in terms of feedback. But the competencies that we are charged with, in a way, are what we're going to give out in the sheet, the landmarks for learning. You'll choose some of them to really focus on and get feedback on. And we'll give you feedback on, if one of those stands out as being completely missing and it needs to be there, we'll give you that feedback privately, whether you ask for it or not. Yes. But sometimes, it depends on the nature of the lesson. Some of those landmarks for learning or competencies aren't necessary in that. Or, it's a bit like, with kids get their sort of primary school report card, is working towards is a reasonable comment, because that's what it is. And what we would be saying to you is we are confident that you are sufficiently prepared that you can continue to learn this stuff. So it will be explicit on those little sheets, but we're not going to go through and tick them off and give you a grade. It's not like that. It'll be about you getting the feedback that you're particularly interested for your learning. We'll give you feedback generally, and privately we can tell you, look, these are the things that you might not be aware of that you need to. What we find in these things is that you are acutely aware. Almost all of you are acutely aware of where your competencies require more attention, and we very rarely have to. However, the nature of awareness is sometimes you can't see what you can't see because it's in the middle of your back. You can't see it. So that's what we're here for. If you can see us in that role of enlarging your awareness and your attention, that's what our role is. It's not about judging you. It's not about picking on you. It's about, can we expand your awareness so that you and I are both confident that you'll go off and become more aware of that area. So if you find us giving feedback or you feel judged in a way that's not Feldenkrais-y, we welcome that feedback, don't we, Jen? Because, I work in a different system, and sometimes I don't always transition from the academic environment into here. So, that's we are not trying, that's a terrible word. Jenny and I have our own personal goals about conducting, and Zoran, I'll speak for him even though he's not here, we have our own personal objectives about running these programs in as congruent a manner as possible. And I think we're getting better at it each program because we give each other feedback about that too. Probably need to do that more. But, you know, it's still learning for us as well. So we're happy to have feedback about that. So, yes, that's a really good question, and we'll give out those sheets after the tea break. Anything else? Now, of course, I can tell you all the secrets of the world, and it might not necessarily help your anxiety. So just be aware of that, about where you think that, who you give the power to reduce your anxiety to. You know, you're welcome to give that power to me. I will abuse it because I can't. You know, what can I say really that will be more powerful than your experience of being competent? There's actually nothing that I can say. And that's really, again, if, you know, Feldenkrais, we love making these big statements, but that's kind of what the method's about, is that this is going to be your feeling of competence will come from your experience, not from me telling you that you're competent. Or your management of your anxiety will come from your management of your anxiety, not from me giving you Prozac or whatever the current drug of choice is for anxiety. See me behind the town hall. Hey, what's happened to the building next door? That's a bit clumsy. They've lost it. Yeah, they were crunching it up. Wow. That was a shock yesterday. I was coming back from the supermarket and careless, Box Hill, mislaid a whole TAFE. Phew. Anyway, okay. All right. Now, it would be nice for this to be a bit of a collective thing, so because you've all had various experiences teaching. So when we go through some of these things, and like I said, there won't be individual sessions on these. I'm going to weave them through as we're teaching and talking, and for people to add in examples of what they've done. Because there won't be a list, you know, like there won't be problem 1, solution 1, problem 2, solution 2. There's going to be more frameworks about how you deal with this, because I can't tell you who's going to be in your class and what you're going to do with them.
I'm just commenting about my hearing from experience pracs. You've been doing that. Just continue to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Telling us all about
my stories.
Your story. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Don't stop.
Okay. Stories. Well, what else have I got except for stories? Are they true or not is the question.
I'm not talking.
I can tell you a story of, I distinctly remember, sorry. Did you say stop telling stories and I went straight into it? You know what our little kind of hurdle thing was in my training, which we didn't even know we were doing, is that we had to go away and make up an ATM and then teach it to a couple of colleagues. Oh, it was ridiculous, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So I was working with one of my colleagues from Adelaide who's a speech pathologist. So she made up this sort of variation on rolling a pearl around in your mouth, which was the most stupid thing to teach other colleagues, because they were all going like that. And we're teaching going like that. So, you know, if you want to do something really, we pick that, and then what can we say about your competence? Observed really well. Like that. Hilarious. And then we found out afterwards, oh, now you can all be ATM teachers. And we're like, what? Like, you can't say that. Like, we've demonstrated nothing. But, you know, it was 1990, so there wasn't a lot of understanding about competencies, or apparently the new word is practice standards. Very subtle. Sorry? A pearl of an ATM. It was, yes, that's right. That's right. Okay. Do you want to, well, should we do an ATM, or do you want a cup of tea first? Pardon? Toilet. Cup of tea? Yeah, quick. Okay. Not quick.